When Susan Boyle first stepped onto that stage in 2009, no one believed what was about to happen. A 47-year-old woman from a small Scottish village, wearing a simple gold dress and an uncertain smile, faced a crowd that had already judged her. Then she sang, and the world stopped. I Dreamed a Dream was more than a song. It was a cry from someone who had been overlooked her entire life. That moment turned Susan Boyle. When Susan Boyle first stepped onto that stage in 2009, no one believed what was about to happen. A 47-year-old woman from a small Scottish village, wearing a simple gold dress and an uncertain smile, faced a crowd that had already judged her. Then she sang, and the world stopped. I Dreamed a Dream was more than a song. It was a cry from someone who had been overlooked her entire life. That moment turned Susan Boyle into an international sensation overnight. But what happens to a dream when the spotlight fades? What becomes of the woman whose voice once silenced millions, and whose silence in recent years left the world wondering if she'd ever sing again? The girl who wasn't supposed to make it. Susan Boyle was born on April 1st, 1961, in the small town of Blackburn, West Lothian, Scotland, the youngest of 9 children in a working-class family. Her mother, Bridget, was 47 when she gave birth, a dangerous age at that time. Doctors warned of complications, and they were right. During delivery, Susan was deprived of oxygen for a few moments. The doctors said she suffered mild brain damage, a label that would haunt her for decades. Her father, Patrick, was a veteran of World War II who returned home deeply scarred. He was often angry, unpredictable, and distant. Growing up, Susan was the quiet child who took the blows, physical and emotional, in silence. She later said she never hated him, only pitied him. He was fighting battles inside that none of us could see. At school, things weren't much better. She was bullied relentlessly, called Simple Susie, hit by teachers, and laughed at by classmates when she fainted from her epilepsy. No one understood her, and she began to believe she wasn't meant for much. But at home, when the world went quiet, Susan sang. Her mother would pause in the kitchen doorway and listen, whispering, "You have a gift, Susan. One day, you must use it for years." She didn't believe it. Her siblings moved out, built lives and families, while she stayed home to care for her parents. When her first and only romance ended, cut short by her father without her knowing, she decided love wasn't for her. By her mid-40s, Susan's world was small: a modest house, a cat named Pebbles, and her mother's fading health. When Bridget died at 91 in 2007, Susan's heart broke. She stopped singing, barely spoke, and disappeared into grief. But before she passed, her mother had made Susan promise one thing: to share her voice with the world. 2 years later, Susan kept that promise, and the world would never be the same again. The night the world stopped. In April 2009, Susan Boyle boarded a bus to Glasgow to audition for Britain's Got Talent. The first note of I Dreamed a Dream changed everything. Within seconds, the theater went silent. Cowell's face shifted from skepticism to awe. Amanda Holden's eyes widened, and by the time Susan reached the final note, the crowd was on its feet. That single performance shattered stereotypes, humbled cynics, and redefined what talent looked like. In less than a week, over 25 million people had watched her audition online. Within 9 days, the number surpassed 100 million, a record in the early days of YouTube. Susan became the symbol of hope, proof that extraordinary talent could come from the most ordinary lives. But while the world celebrated, Susan struggled to keep up. The overnight fame was overwhelming. Reporters surrounded her small home in Blackburn, paparazzi followed her to church, and journalists dug into her past. She had no media training, no manager, and no idea how to handle the sudden invasion of her privacy. When she advanced to the semifinals, she sang Memory from Cats and once again brought the audience to tears. Everyone believed she would win. But on the final night, despite massive support, she lost to the dance group Diversity. The cameras caught her smiling and congratulating them, but behind the scenes, exhaustion and anxiety consumed her. Within 24 hours, Susan collapsed and was taken to a private clinic in London. Doctors diagnosed her with severe emotional exhaustion, a breakdown caused by the sudden and intense pressure of fame. Simon Cowell later admitted, "We pushed too hard. She wasn't ready for the world that came for her." Few knew it then, but that hospital stay would mark the first of many battles Susan would fight. Not against others, but against herself. Fame, fortune, and the price she paid. When Susan Boyle left the clinic just days later, the world wasn't sure if she'd ever perform again. But Susan surprised everyone. She didn't retreat. She rose. Within weeks, she joined the Britain's Got Talent tour, performing across the UK to standing ovations in city after city. By November 2009, she released her first album, I Dreamed a Dream, and once again defied every expectation. It sold over 400,000 copies in the UK in just 1 week, more than the next 5 albums combined. In the United States, she sold 700,000 copies, breaking records set by stars half her age. By the end of the year, she had sold 10 million albums worldwide. Her sudden wealth was staggering. The woman who once lived on disability payments was now worth millions. Susan became the first woman in UK history to have 3 consecutive albums debut at #1. I Dreamed a Dream, The Gift, and Someone to Watch Over Me. Her records went platinum around the world, and she performed for the Queen at Windsor Castle, singing Mull of Kintyre for the Diamond Jubilee. Overnight, she had become a national treasure, the pride of Scotland, the voice of ordinary people. But success did not bring peace. Behind the warmth of her smile, Susan wrestled with loneliness and the weight of expectation. Fame had changed her life, but it also magnified her fears. Her family, once supportive, began to fracture under financial tension. One of her brothers reportedly demanded £50,000, threatening self-harm if she refused. Susan, deeply sensitive, gave him the money, and later regretted it. The incident led to mistrust and arguments within the family. She confessed in one interview that fame made things worse, not better at home. Then came her health. In 2012, doctors diagnosed Susan with type 2 diabetes. They warned her that if she didn't change her lifestyle, she could lose her ability to sing. She gave up her favorite foods, lost nearly 50 pounds, and became more private than ever. Fame had given her everything she thought she wanted, money, recognition, purpose, but it had also taken away her peace. "People think fame fixes you," she once said, "but sometimes it only makes you realize how broken you were to begin with." Diagnosis, faith, and finding love. For much of her life, Susan Boyle believed she had brain damage. It was what doctors told her as a child, what teachers repeated in school, and what bullies used to justify their cruelty. But in 2013, everything changed. After a series of new tests, doctors discovered the truth. Susan didn't have brain damage at all. She had Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism that often comes with high intelligence but social and sensory challenges. For Susan, the diagnosis was both a revelation and a relief. "I felt like a huge weight had been lifted," she said. All those years of feeling different suddenly made sense. The news came at a time when Susan's career was stabilizing, but her inner life was fragile. She was still learning how to navigate fame while living alone in the same small house in Blackburn. Despite earning millions, she refused to move. "It's my home," she said simply. "It's where I feel safe." Her life was modest. She cooked for herself, did her own shopping, and attended the same local church where she'd once sung in the choir. Her faith became her compass. "When I doubt myself," she told the Christian Post, I turned to God. My faith has been the backbone of my career. That faith carried her through another first, love. In 2014, while touring the United States, Susan met a doctor at her hotel in Florida. He recognized her but didn't treat her like a celebrity. They began talking over breakfast, and for the first time in decades, she let someone in. "He was a true gentleman," she said, her face lighting up. It didn't last long. The distance and her schedule made it difficult, but it reminded her that it wasn't too late for love. She also began to open up about her longing to be a mother. In a 2019 interview, she confessed, "I've never had children, and I regret that. Maybe I could foster someday." It was a rare glimpse into the private heart behind the public voice, a woman who had achieved more than anyone expected, yet still dreamed of ordinary happiness. Through faith, diagnosis, and brief romance, Susan began to understand herself in a way fame never allowed, as someone not broken, but finally whole. The storm and the silence. By 2020, Susan Boyle's life seemed to have reached a calm rhythm. She had released 8 albums, performed around the world, and earned the respect of both fans and critics. But just when it looked like she had finally found peace, tragedy struck. In April 2022, Susan suffered a major stroke that nearly took her voice and her life. For weeks, she couldn't speak properly. The left side of her body was weak, and doctors warned her that singing again might never be possible. For someone whose voice was her purpose, it was a devastating blow. She withdrew from public life completely. Her social media accounts went silent for nearly 2 years. Friends said she spent most of her time in therapy, physical, speech, and vocal rehabilitation, determined to prove the doctors wrong. "It was hard," she later admitted. "I won't pretend otherwise. There were days I thought it was over, but somewhere between pain and prayer, Susan found strength. Her faith once again became her lifeline." She told the Daily Mail in 2024, "It's taken me 3 years to fight my way back. I had to learn how to speak again, how to sing again. But I'm stubborn. I wasn't ready to stop." In June 2023, she returned to the stage that made her famous, Britain's Got Talent. No one knew what to expect. When she appeared, the audience gasped, and as she sang "I Dreamed a Dream Once More," the theater erupted in tears. Simon Cowell later said it was the most moving performance in the history of the show. That night, Susan didn't just reclaim her voice, she reclaimed her life. Her comeback was slow but steady. She shared updates of her recovery, small videos of her singing exercises, and messages of gratitude to her fans. She said she had spent more than 1,000 hours rebuilding her strength. "I lost everything for a moment," she said, "but I got it back, piece by piece." The world realized that Susan's greatest performance wasn't the one that made her famous, but the one that brought her back from silence. The comeback. In May 2025, Susan Boyle finally did what doctors once told her would never happen again. She returned to the recording studio. It had been 6 long years since her last session, and 3 years since the stroke that nearly ended her singing career. On May 19th, she shared the news with the world through an emotional Instagram post. "Today was wonderful, emotional, and everything in between," she wrote. "I made my return to the recording studio for the first time in 6 years, something I was told I might never achieve again. But here we are, in my happy place. Fans from every corner of the globe flooded her page with love and tears. The woman who once made the world believe in miracles was proving yet again that dreams don't die. They simply wait." In a follow-up interview, Susan revealed she had been quietly writing and planning new songs during her recovery. Her manager, Geraldine, stood by her throughout the process, guiding her back to confidence. "I had to start from zero," Susan admitted. "But maybe that's what faith is, taking one small step forward even when you're terrified." Those who had followed her story for years saw something deeper in her comeback, a triumph of spirit over suffering. Susan now calls the studio her happy place, a sanctuary where she can be herself without judgment. She lives in the same modest home in Blackburn, Scotland, the one she bought decades ago for just £65,000. Despite earning over $35 million throughout her career, she still shops locally, attends church every Sunday, and says, "Fame never changed who I am. It just gave me a story to tell." Her voice, now more textured with age, carries a raw emotion that only comes from having survived. As she prepares to release new music and a documentary chronicling her recovery, the world waits once again to hear that familiar, trembling, yet unstoppable voice. Simon Cowell recently said, "Susan changed everything, not just for our show, but for what the world believes talent looks like." And he's right. Susan Boyle's story isn't just about a song or a contest. It's about a woman who turned pain into purpose, silence into music, and dreams into legacy. From a shy Scottish woman no one believed in, to an international symbol of resilience, Susan Boyle has lived every note of her dream. And even after strokes, struggles, and silence, she's still here, still singing, and still proving that miracles can happen more than once. Do you remember the first time you heard her sing "I Dreamed a Dream"? Share your memory in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more incredible stories of stars who refuse to fade.